Yes, it started.
So a very good afternoon to all the participants and our guest speaker, Dr. Pernille Ingilsen, for the third session of ENVIRO Webtalk 2021. Namaste from India, ma'am. And also to all the international participants. Time is 2 p.m. according to Indian Standard Time. And I, Zuthona Tuni, student of School of Civil Engineering at Lovely Professional University, will be your co-chair for this afternoon session. On behalf of Civil Engineering, School of Civil Engineering, Lovely Professional University, I welcome you, ma'am, Dr. Pernille Ingilsen, for your session on the topic, the role of water and wastewater utilities in the transition to a sustainable human society. I am also thoroughly elated to introduce Dr. Amit Srivastava, Professor and Head of School of Civil Engineering, Lovely Professional University, who will be chairing this session and will be co-chaired by me and my faculty, Dr. Janaki Ballav-Swen. So to welcome the speaker on board, I now kindly request my faculty member, Dr. Janaki Ballav-Swen, to take over the session as chair and start the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Dr. Pernille Ingilsen. My apologies if I have pronounced your name incorrectly, ma'am.
It's fine.
Before we start the technical session, let me introduce Dr. Pernille Ingilsen to the audience, whoever is present in this Google Meet platform. Dr. Pernille is a manager in a project department, Hillerød Utility, Denmark editor-in-chief, Aqua at IW Publishing. Dr. Pernille work in innovative water companies to achieve sustainability within the water sector. Her approach is scientific and innovative, and she thrives in learning collaboration and co-creation projects. Her education background is in environmental engineering. In her PhD, combined this with instrumentation, control, and automation. She has a keen interest in transforming water utilities for a sustainable future based on the ideas of integrated water resources management. Her personal strengths are leadership, visionary strategy, and integration of multiple perspectives. Dr. Pernille works as a leader of project manager in Hillerød Utility, where sustainability is the key story. As editor-in-chief of Aqua, Dr. Pernille is trying to resolve a tremendous challenge moving into the age of sustainability. This has implications for all aspects of water, society, and life. With this, I hand over the session to Dr. Pernille to deliver the talk on the topic, the role of water and wastewater utilities in the transition to a sustainable human society. Before we start, a note for the participants or audience that you need to keep your camera in the switched off mode. In addition to, you need to be in muted position so that we can have a smooth presentation. If you have any query or questions from this subject or maybe from the presentation, you can put those queries in the chat box, or else you will be given opportunity once the session is over. So I request Dr. Pernille to take over, and you may start your presentation, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, and namaste to the two of you and everybody participating. I will now make my presentation, share it with you. So, as told, what I'm going to talk about today is a topic that is very close to my heart, and it's about the role of water and wastewater utilities in the transition to a sustainable human society. Let me just see. First of all, I would just say thank you very much for inviting me. I've been in India twice, and I'm a big fan. I think India is a very, very nice country to visit, and I'm happy that Denmark and India has a lot of good relationships to each other. So namaste on that. I found this recently in a book. I have taken up interest in Sanskrit, and I found this, and I'm not sure that the translation is correct, but I hope it is. And if so, I really think it's nice that you can have a word that both means that something is filled with water and it's filled with love, and that is interchangeable. I think that's a very nice thought to start this presentation, and then I would be happy to hear afterwards if this is the correct translation, if any of you know that. About me, I lead a number of different lives. As mentioned, I'm the chief of the projects department at ENVIRO Utility, and I have 10 project managers doing all kinds of project management jobs. They are laying pipelines, they're building waterworks or wastewater treatment plants, or waste management facilities and all that kind of thing. So I'm sort of guiding all of these people in doing their different projects. And I'm doing that in ENVIRO Utility, which has a tagline, which is something about the sustainable future. And everything we do in these projects, we try to sort of put in sustainability aspects into that, which is in many ways a new way of working. Additionally, I'm the author of the books Water Stewardship, which came out last year around this time, and Smart Water Utilities. This presentation will be around the idea of water stewardship, but in a sense it also builds on smart water utilities. As mentioned, I have a background as a control engineer, and really working with intelligence in water utilities has been the center of a long part of my career. The last 5 years or so, it has really been about transforming that intelligence into something that leads to a more sustainable future. As a third thing, I'm editor-in-chief of Aqua, Water Infrastructure, Ecosystems and Society, which is I think 50 or 60 years old magazine that is coming out via International Water Association Publishing. So I'm doing this editor-in-chief job together with a Chinese professor, and we have just relaunched it and really tried to find a way to sort of bridge this from the old world and into a more sustainable future. I'm also the co-founder of a very small movement called Monastery 2020, and it's not that it's from my CV. It's not very interesting, but for you to understand what kind of person you're in front of, this is actually something that is very close to my heart. And what it is it's not a particularly Christian movement, but it's rather a way of trying to come together and try to find what is the calling in our lives and what kind of difference can we make in the world. I have, in fact, a fifth one, which is a concept that I'm not sure that how well known that is, but in Denmark it's really become something special. That I'm an autism mom, so a lot of people or children today have autism in Denmark, and understanding this in a way strange kid and finding ways to accommodate this fragility that comes with mental health issues is also an important part of me, and an important part of trying to find a way to a more sustainable future where there is also place for people with autism and all kinds of different handicaps. I was born in 1971, so I'll be 50 this year. And what is funny about that, in a sense, because most of my life has been around sustainability. And if you look at this Earth Overshoot Day, which is a measure of when have we used all the renewable resources for this year, it seems to this year, 2019 or 2021, it's somewhere in July we've used all the resources. But when I was born in 1970, it was approximately precisely around perfect. So we used all the resources and not too much. But when I was born, and since then, we have been using too much all of the time. And I think that sort of puts my life in a certain perspective. I've always been interested in this and sort of work with it in different ways, and it's interesting to experience that there are still deeper and deeper levels of understanding of this problem. and new sort of avenues are opening up to how we can handle this this situation for the world and then for each individual country. For the country of Denmark, we have a lot of pride, and it's also very much praised for working with sustainability. But when we look into Overshoot Day, Denmark is one of the most resource-consuming countries in the world. So yes, we are working on it, and no, we are not there at all. This is the book that I wrote and published 1 year ago. It's been a book that has been 5 years in the making, and it's really been a difficult one to write because it was sort of trying to, I had the sense that we have been working with sustainability for 45 years, and somehow I felt, which is obviously true when you see the previous curve, that we are not making progress. So something is not working in the way we are addressing it. And I really wanted to look into that from the perspective of water. When we talk of sustainability, a lot of talk is about climate change, and that's a very, very important issue to work on. Even for the water sector, we do a lot of work on climate change, both dealing with the climate change, but also trying to avoid the climate change. But what I tried to do in this book, and what's really close to my heart, is really to look into water and how we're treating water, why we are doing it, and how we can change our attitude, how we can change it into something beautiful, like the Sanskrit words beyond earlier. It's sort of how can we sort of have that love for water and thereby not harm water. And as you know, a lot of people discuss, water and life is very, very clearly interlinked. So if we pollute water, we also pollute life, obviously, and we see that everywhere. So how are we going to change personally in order to make a different footprint or even handprint in the world? That has been sort of what I've been trying to do in this book. So it's a philosophical work, trying a psychological work, really trying to find out what is going on, but it's also a very practical world. So what do we actually do in water utilities? How can we sort of inch our way forward towards its more sustainable future? The word water stewardship is gaining in interest. You can see here this is a special statistics that is made by Google Ngram. It was made until 2017, where they looked into all kinds of books and internet pages and trying to find out how popular are different kinds of words. And if you look into the word water stewardship, it is extremely rare already, even though it's increasing. Just to give you an understanding of how rare this is used, it is as popular as the word allurophile or serology or discopulos. You can see the meaning of these words. So it's really it's not a word that has yet really come to its maturity, and I think there's a lot of work trying to understand what would that mean, what would that be in practice, how would that feel, what kind of acts would come from this understanding of having a water stewardship role. And that's sort of what I'm very, very interested in this moment, and which I will try to give a bit more content in this presentation. So what is water stewardship? I really take it in the broadest possible definition as a wise caring for everything with water. So it's not only drinking water, it's not only wastewater, it's not only the lakes, it's not only the ocean, but it's really sort of having this understanding of the whole water body that sort of spans the world, but it's also part of each of our bodies. So you can say it's a call, it's a journey, a role, it's an inner orientation. There's also obviously a science to it. It's a methodology. It's kind of a bridge making from here to a new future. It's a lot about visioning. It's about listening, really being attentive to what you're doing. there's some poetry is in it, and I think that's important in order for us to sort of feel this connection to water. And it's obviously a role of leadership, and I really encourage all of you who sort of find this content interesting to really take up that mantle of leadership on water stewardship. Water stewardship takes place, you could say, at least on 3 different levels. There's a personal thing to it, that you sort of need to, for yourself, connect to water and understand the beauty of water, and sort of find a way to appreciate it. Find a way for yourself to do things right with water in your home and everywhere else where you meet water. There's a local aspect to it. My starting point is always the utility, because that's where I've been working. So in the utility role in a local area is to really take care of the full watershed that this municipality spans. And of course, there's a global aspect to it. It has some differences from the climate change thing, where you sort of, when you emit CO2 or methane or any of the other greenhouse gases, it's immediately global, and if you withdraw something, you immediately do something for the very big pool of the atmosphere. For water, it is in a sense the same, and yet it is not really, because what you do to the water in your local place really impacts you locally mostly, and then eventually will also impact you globally, but that's a much slower process. So you can actually do something locally to make the waters nicer. And I think what is interesting is that we cannot sort of have one measure of like CO2 equivalence like you have in climate change, because all water issues are very, very complex and very bounded to the local. So what is really required here is that a lot of water stewards all over the world take interest into the local water, really find out how is the state, how can we improve, how are we harming it, how can we sort of make the harm less or even disappear. So in that sense, the question of water is markedly different from climate change. From my personal start, it seems like I have been working with water for a long while, and there was a lot of discomfort in that. I was in a way stuck in my work and felt that things were not moving in the right direction. I had this sense that I was not moving it, but I was moved by the water sector and the industry and society and everything just churning on like a big machine. And I think what is interesting, if we sort of can speak of interesting in the events that we're seeing right now with the Corona situation, is that it has really made the whole world come to a halt. So we really, this is a very interesting point of time, and I hope everybody of you listening are safe, and that your families are safe and unharmed. But it's really unprecedented in at least all of my 50 years, almost 50 years long life, that the world has come to a halt like this, that the world is experiencing the same issue at once, and that we have this sense that it has something to do with how we have made this world. But coming back to this, I felt that there was a kind of desecration in what we were doing when we were working with water. When I work with water, and I'm sure you will experience the same, it's a lot about putting things into Excel sheets and calculating business cases and finding what is the fee that we need to take from people, and getting in touch with the contractors who are angry about different kinds of things, and you have all this noise around taking care of water that is really the core of taking care of water is just having so little attention in what we're doing. It's much more like an industry. So how could we sort of make this a more sacred act to care for water? There was also a sense of apathy, not only with me, but a lot of my friends and colleagues, where we sort of getting moved by this industry, also felt that there was really nothing we could do. Might be able to slip in something here and there, but it was really, we felt a bit lost in what we were doing. And what is interesting with the word apathy is that it actually, it's a Latin word, and probably, I imagine, coming from Sanskrit or even older words. And the meaning of that word is a lack of ability to feel, especially a lack of ability to suffer. So, from a sustainable point of view, or we really have to take in the suffering of what we're experiencing, both with the coronavirus, but also with what is happening to our world. We really have to take it in and reflect on that, and really not, what is happening right now is that we are getting used to it. We are sort of, okay, this is how the world is, and I have never seen a sustainable world, and most of you haven't either. So it's sort of, this is just the world, is sort of the mindset. But if you look into the world for the last thousands or millions of years, it has not been like it is now. This is a result of something that has actually, from an evolutionary point of view, been here for a very short while. But of course, we haven't seen anything else. So that's really. But we really have to struggle to understand that. And the third discomfort was about banality, and I think a lot of I think even my way, and I'm working on it, but everything we do it in a very banal way. Oh, we need this amount of water, so just put in the pipe and pump it up, and we're not conscious of the effects we are having, or who does not have the water now. And even though in Denmark we treat most of the wastewater, it's not perfectly treated, and that has an effect on where it ends. So really not just cutting off that kind of feeling, but really be more complex in our way to work. So what I found was really to understand these discomforts of mine, and I think for all of you, it might be interesting to sort of analyze for yourself. Do you feel this discomfort, and how it might be different words that are relevant for you, but really trying to pinpoint what is the pain in my life in regards to this crisis. And then I think we cannot stay in this crisis. We really have to get across to a different kind of world, and to do that, I think it's very nice to imagine that we sort of see some lighthouses out there, and some of the lighthouses that I described in the book was really to understand the role of the heart in this, to find new ways of working, both with my personal work and how I was working with other people. It was really to go back and listen a bit to indigenous wisdom. There's really, these indigenous people have really accomplished to keep on living in a sustainable way, and they have such a different and much more, what would I call it, animistic, or they really understand the nature in a different way, in a way that we have sort of cut off in ourselves. A vision for a better future, higher level mindsets, which I will talk a bit about today. Integrated water resource management principles were actually developed in the 70s and 80s, and it's very interesting if you look into the UN papers on these principles. There's really a clear-sightedness of what is needed even so many years ago. And then really understanding nature and going back to nature and understanding how do we interface, how do we integrate ourselves in nature. So if we look a bit into mindsets, it's very interesting to see, and I'm going to show you 3 different slides that sort of explains the same thing. And what is sort of the main theme here is human development. So we see what I'm going to show you is different kinds of models that sort of try to describe what has happened with how we have seen the world. And this is by a very interesting organizational expert called Frederick Laloux. And he's sort of looking in how have we as humans organized ourselves. So going back 100,000 years, we were mostly foraging bands, going out and hunting things. Later, we sort of there was some authority by the elders. They were sort of the carriers of the wisdom, and I think maybe in a way similar to what we see in indigenous societies today, that you have this respect for the elders, and they have this different perspective where you can say, at least in Western societies, and might also be in India. I'm not familiar with that, but elders today are maybe not a burden, but it's very close to that. That's sort of what is seen. So these are people who cannot work, they cannot produce anymore. But there was a time where we had a different relationship to the elders. Later there came this powerful chiefdoms, and this organization is actually similar to the mafia. You have some people who are very strong, who can sort of dominate and organize and conquer different domains in the world. Then later you have formal hierarchies and command and control, and you have countries being established somewhere between these two. Later, what we have seen the latest 100 or 200 years, and which I think today is the dominant mindset, is a very effective matrix predicting control. You have this shareholder perspective, and this is at least in Denmark the normal one. And then we have sort of the more what you would call liberal, or more not hippie, that's not the right word, but in that direction where you sort of see relationship about outcomes, and you have this stakeholder perspective. So instead of the shareholder who is going to get paid from their investment, we sort of take this view of all the stakeholders to the program. The problem with this is a very beautiful mindset, but the problem is often that you have relationships above outcomes. So this is why I think also the hippie movement and similar thing, they have a somewhat difficult reputation, because they have extreme difficulties in producing good results. So in order to sort of integrate all of these different mindsets, you have this what is happening now is more and more self-management for evolutionary purpose, and in very fringe, kind of on the edge of management. They are sort of imagining that at some point we will hardly have any use of leaders and managers. We might have somebody sort of keeping the purpose of an organization, but in the organization we are really working much more from our, you may say, calling, or what we really want, and we are organized in a much looser way. So that's sort of the direction that at least Lalou predicts moving forward. A different kind of sort of evolutionary understanding comes from Otosharma, who's very well known from Theory U. And he sort of divides everything up in the version 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is a much shorter perspective. But if you look to health, for example, the version 1.0, the operation system version 1.0 of health, that's traditional doctor-centric. So you have the doctor, and people get in, and he fixes you, and you get out again. But he's sort of the center of health. 2.0 starts evidence-based medicine, that we really have these huge investigation of what actually works. So the doctor is not, he may still be the expert, but he doesn't have the authority to just say that this works and this doesn't work. It really has to be based on science. Later on, and I see that increasingly in Denmark, is you have this patient-centric pathogenesis. That means you take the patient in, and you sort of try to organize the healthcare system around the patient. But still, and the reason why they think this is 3.0 is that it's centered around illness all the time. So a health 4.0 will be based on salutogenesis, which is sources of well-being. So instead of sort of having the health system focus primarily on diseases, it will focus on well-being. So you will have this making sure that people live a good life, and I think we see that in a lot of campaigns and things like that. But it's really not the leading operating system. But that's sort of what Otosharma predicts will happen. Similarly, when you get to learning, you have the traditional teacher-centric standing and just bum 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 telling kids what they need to learn. Later, it becomes test-driven, and he calls this bulimia learning, that you really have to learn a lot of things and you have to get a lot of tests and you will be fine, and next, and you really sort of put in a lot of knowledge into the kids. Later, and what is partly happening, and I think that's very interesting from an autism spectrum, because autist children, they can't take either version 1 or 2, and earlier they were just put away in the basement more or less, because they couldn't really stand this kind of thing, and they weren't equipped for it. So what we saw then in Denmark were that these were like we call them something, I don't know if you were to translate it, the village loony. So you have this crazy guy going around in the village and people took care of him, but he was really an outcast. What we see now is with autism, we sort of try to understand what is it with this child. And I think what's very interesting is that we learn that many of them have a very, very high intelligence and very specific abilities. So really trying to find that and sort of find that. In the future, he suggests that it will be learning 4.0, where it will not be about learning as an individual, but really co-shaping the future. So going together and actually experimenting with doing things, and through these experiments, get your own kind of learning from that, because you are now actually interacting with the real world rather than studying theory. And so it goes on for the different. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's very interesting to sort of see this pattern. When we look into human development, there's a number of independent researchers that have sort of tried to find out with people where do we start as a child or as a baby, and what are sort of the levels of human development that we can achieve. And what is interesting is that these six different researchers, they all found that there is sort of some levels that are very clearly defined. So if you take the Graves one, which is the one I understand the best, is that you have from the start, you have this survival thing where you are in the foraging bands, or you are in a place where everything is about survival, and that's sort of what you're equipped for, and all your attention is around survival. Then you come to a more magic animistic level, and you can see that also in kids believing there are I don't know, ghosts under the bed or things like that. So even if you're not in a culture where you have this animistic tradition, there will in the consciousness sort of be this experience. Then you have the egocentric part, and I think a lot of the world is still in this level. Usually, if you have a sort of a normal, or not normal, but a very when you have very high to the ceiling and kids are growing up through all these stages, this would usually be around the teenage years. So they're just about, everything is about me. Later, it becomes into this absolutistic, which is a very, I think the best metaphor for understanding is that you are very devoted to your country or to your religion or to something like higher ideals, and you're willing to actually suffer and do a lot just for the community, and that's, and you have this word truth force, so you're really very interested in doing the right thing in the culture you're in. Then you come to this drive, which corresponds a bit to what we earlier spoke about on the sort of stakeholder perspective. You're really we are working with science. We are trying to optimize. We're trying to earn a lot of money. We are trying to do things in a very machine kind of way, in order to get a very efficient system. Then we come to this relativistic, which again, I'm sad to say, this is actually my best metaphor, is sort of this hippie thing where human bonding and understanding of relationship takes center stage. And what is very interesting, then comes a very marked line where you say now, and then you come into a sort of a new kind of way of working that's try to sort of integrate all the best thing from the development stages below. And that is actually what we are sort of trying to move into when we talk about water stewardship. So I've tried to sort of find out what are sort of the key trends when you look through this progression, this progressive transformation. And one thing is seems to always be a higher degree of inclusiveness of greater and greater circles. So you start off being very, very much about yourself, then maybe about the family, then maybe about the country. Then maybe you might go into this more global understanding. And at some point you will also see that the animals and everything living is sort of also within this circle. So that's sort of an expansion of your ability to show empathy. There will also be higher degrees of clarity and discernment in objectives and methods. We will be much clearer on what we are trying to achieve. When you sort of go to the lower levels, when you look to survival, there's often not a lot of strategy, or it's very much, oh, I'm hungry now, I'm going to get some food. So it goes from what you could call an impulsiveness to much more cognitively clear in what you're doing. There's an increased ability of personal sensing and acting, and maybe that's not even the right word to say, because you always have this personal sensing and acting. But again, you get very much more aware of what you're doing. You get aware of what you're sensing. You sort of sense in a more it's wrong to say intelligent way. It's intelligent in regards to this kind of movement. But of course, if you are in a survival kind of setting, then the most intelligent thing is to be in a survival mode. So it's not necessarily that things are getting better. It's just more adapted to a more and more complex world. The organization becomes more able to change and adapt. We get a better balance between me and us. What is interesting in these progression is that it seems to sort of be a lot about me, and then the next stage is a lot about us, and then it's a lot about me, and you sort of go forth and back between, which you could say in a political sense is the right wing and the west wing of politics. But what you experience as you get up is that you sort of get a better balance, that of course I need to take in the whole society, my whole environment, but I also need to sort of keep my own core and keep my integrity and sort of have that. And then I'm not sure, I'm hoping, or this is really true, but I think it's true that we will experience less fear and feeling more alive. At least we will feel more alive again. I think we are in a very difficult position right now in this industrial mindset we are right now, where aliveness has been very hard suppressed, and we really need to get back to that. So if we were going to think of utilities in these different versions, you could say the first version of a water utility is only occupied with having a water supply for water needs satisfaction. That's sort of the most basic thing to make sure of, and that will be the focus when you are in version 1.0. In 2.0, you will probably also realize that water has to have a certain quality, and it has a lot of impact on health, so we have to take care of that. And this is also where wastewater treatment, wastewater handling sort of becomes important. In 3.0, which a lot of the parties is moving into, is that we are looking into the environmental protection. We realize that if we're not taking care of lakes and ocean and etc., we will sort of be damaged by that. And the 4.0 is more of a water stewardship mindset. So you have this even higher level of trying to integrate your system in nature, so that that the factories actually become like nature. It's not that it's that nature would look at what we're doing and say, oh, now you're harming my livelihood here again. So this weekend I thought, could we just sort of get a better feeling for these stages, and if you look at stage 1.0, I found this American movie. It's somewhat old, but it's about getting water in. Now I'm just wondering if it's California. It's probably California. Where there's sort of a mafia war on the water, and some people are holding back the water in order for the economy to suffer and then release it again. And you sort of have this idea that the water is a resource that I can use, that I can do whatever I like to with. And if you look to the Sustainable Development Goals, when you look to target 6.06 is all about the water and water utility business, and 6.1 is actually trying to satisfy this most basic level of water utilities. So it's achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. And when you look into these UN statistics of how many people do not have clean water today, that one in 10 people on the planet still don't have that. How much time is spent by mostly women and girls to haul water, etc. You really realize that this 1.0, we haven't even reached that on a global level. So there's really a lot of work to do just to reach this level. Still, if you look to 2.0, I hope many of you know this movie by with Julia Roberts called Erin Brockovich. She realizes something is in the water in a small town, and she really keeps on following the trails and the evidence, and she brings down a whole industry who is sort of polluting the water for a long while. It's a very interesting movie, and then she's very strong in her commitment to ensure the safety of the people in the city. The picture there with the skeleton is a very famous picture from London, where you had this situation that all the waste is just dumped in the river of Thames, and people are getting so ill about that, so they have sort of this death rowing on all these waste things. If we look to the SDGs, it's about 6.2 and 6.3. It's end oceanification and provide access to sanitation and hygiene. So you sort of move into just having the water. You also make sure that you handle the waste part as well. You improve water quality, wastewater treatment, and safe reuse. So the third one, I've chosen Water World as a picture sort of, or a movie sort of illustrating that view, that suddenly we see that our world is actually in danger, and that we are really doing something detrimental to the water. And you see here, if you stay in the track of the SDG 6, it's 6.4, where you have increased water use efficiency and ensure fresh water supply. So you have this starting care for the environment, but really to capture this level, you need to go to 14.1, reduce marine pollution, and 15.1, conserve and restore terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems. This is also the place where organizations like Greenpeace come into place. So this 4.0 I've illustrated with the idea of avatar. You have this society up in some different planet where you have a people who sort of have found a way to integrate with nature and really have this respect for nature all the time. And we see the human colonizers coming in and trying to get the the values out of this planet, and then you have this clash between the two cultures. And I think that's really what James Cameron wants to also give us an idea that the world could actually look quite different from the industrial mindset that we have now. If you look to the SDGs, the last 4 of the SDGs is actually sort of occupied with trying to open up this field and trying to sort of massage this mindset and make progress there. So you see here the integrated water resources management as target 6.5, protect and restore water-related ecosystems. I think that's a very important thing at the moment, to the restore part. For a long while we have been working with protection, but that's not enough anymore. We really need to restore ecosystems. Then there's expand water and sanitation support to developing countries. So you really have this sense that even though, for example, from a Danish perspective, we have everything is good here, but that's not enough. That we really haven't done our work until everybody is part of having a safe water system. Then we have support local engagement in water and sanitation management. So we also again see this, that we're sort of drawing the community into our work. And if you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as one, I really like this illustration where you have these 3 different levels. You really get this sense of this is a holistic. It's sort of we're trying to make some goals that we can all sort of contribute into, and that will sort of solve the problem for everybody. So there's this very interesting solidarity, but also this understanding of how we are connected ecologically, and how this is so important that the CO2 that we breathe out is breathed in by trees, and out come the O2, and that we have this interchange between us and the environment. And then, which I find nice, is that it also sort of have a spiritual level. It's not only material things. We also have to find ways to come together, like we're doing right now, across countries, and yeah, in any ways to sort of find out what are we really longing for in our environment. So at the point we're sort of in a tipping point between 2 perspectives, and there's this vision perspective: leave no one behind, do no harm. That is sort of the key sentences in the SDGs. And there's sort of hoping that there's a belief in a better world, that we can really change it, that we can have a flourishing world. So that's sort of one movement. And then there's a more sinister movement that is sort of the catastrophe perspective, which really shows that every serious research shows that if we don't change course, we will really have serious problems. And I believe we are all, if we are opening our eyes, we are seeing these problems already. So we really need to change course. So we cannot get to there while just being sleeping. We have to wake up and take responsibility. So and there are many themes, and more of them are urgent. And water is urgent, climate change is urgent, biodiversity is urgent. A lot of social issues are very, very urgent, because if we do not solve the social issues, we will not sort of have the intelligence and the strength to do what is required. I'll just check on the time. I feel I'm using more time than... Actually, I only have 10 minutes. I will just jump forward a bit to this instead, and say that there's a number of skills that you need to engage with and develop in order to bridge the sustainable water. To sense with all that we are. So it's really to understand, and then to use your sensing apparatus in a good way, to experiment for change, to gain a holistic understanding of water, and to integrate ourselves in nature. and to really work wholeheartedly. And these are sort of the experiments that we can all work with individually. So to sense with all that we are is that there's this very nice quote that says, one cannot practice sustainable leadership unless it is grounded in a profound anchorage in the self. Sustainable leadership is generated by our ability to read feelings as sounding boards for dreams, intentions, decisions, and action. And I hope this sort of gives you an idea of how important your sensing apparatus will be in this transition. To experiment for change, I really like this one. You cannot understand a system until you try to change it. So if you see something out there, you want to change it, or you think this should be different, really try to change it. That's the only that's the only way you can really find out how a system is working. And I think a lot of people are not doing this work, and they're sitting sort of in the audience, this is not working, this is too bad, etc. And that's a very easy position. But really getting into the grid of life and trying to change things, you will really find how interconnected everything are. And it will take, at least for me, it's taken a lifetime before I get a sense of what kind of pressure points can I do to change things. And it's really an interesting journey, and very important that we all try to do this. Gain a holistic understanding of water. Veronica Strang from the UK, she's a very interesting anthropologist, and she's been working with water in culture for most of her life. And she says that every cultural group has its own music and images, its own ways of reconnecting with water. It is vital that these are cherished, not forgotten in an unthinking, unfeeling scrabble for material advantage. Societies need to remember what water really is, what it means and why it matters. Water is the fluid connection between humankind and every organism on Earth. We are all the hyper sea. So really having this sense of these organisms getting out of water millions of years ago, and carrying the water with us, and sort of all be water creatures. I think that's a very powerful image to have in your system moving forward from here. To integrate ourselves in nature, James Lovelock, who I hope you know, made the Gaia theory, which really, his idea was that the world, the Earth, is sort of one living organism that by its interaction sort of makes sure that the environment is good for life, ensures that the oxygen gets around this 20% that we need so that we can breathe, and not higher, because if we were higher, everything would sort of burn because it would self-ignite. So really we somehow, the living system ensures that the Earth is livable. And he wrote in his book, when I started to write in 1974, in the unspoiled landscape of Western Ireland, it was like living in a house run by Gaia, this idea of the living Earth, someone who tried hard to make all her guests comfortable. So really understand that we are a guest in this system, and we need to help everybody get be comfortable. Then finally, to work wholeheartedly. And I think that's a journey that everybody needs to do to really, a lot of people are, especially in the Western world, are very well connected with the brains part, but not very much with the heart. I see a different world when I go to India, and I see a lot more heart connectedness there, and we really could learn a lot from you. But this is really important. But also to follow the heart, and to say, okay, there are no unsacred places in the world. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. So the job here is really to make sure that that we make places sacred again. And I'm so sorry, but I really have a lot more I would like to talk about, and I have a lot of slides extra. And in the bottom there's one saying thank you for this session, but yeah, time has gone, and I will finish my presentation at this point. So thanks a lot for listening.